What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. It is week 9 of fantasy hockey, and you know the drill. Before we begin, I just want to give a shout out to my ex at Fired at Fantasy. You guys should follow me on there if you want up-to-date fantasy hockey information, and also my Discord community. We have a lot of people in there chatting fantasy hockey, including myself. The link is in the description. With that being said, let's start off with the teams with the most light nights for this week. I want you guys to take a look at the schedule on the left side of the screen. Now, things are pretty clear cut in terms of light nights and heavy nights, for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday being the light nights, and then Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday being the heavy nights. So you're going to be able to stream players to fit into those Monday, Wednesday, and Friday games. But then Sunday, it's not quite clear. 8 games is usually the threshold, so it ultimately depends on the makeup of your team, if you have a utility spot. So I want you guys to make sure you check if you have open spots to put a player into on Sunday night. With that being said, if you're looking at the teams here, I've sort of categorized the light nights based on potential and guaranteed. For example, the Ducks and the Sharks play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. If you have an open roster spot on Sunday, then these two teams would be the best. You're going to get 4 light nights out of them, and that's obviously going to be beneficial for maximizing your games. However, if you don't have an open roster spot on Sunday, you have a full roster, then the Ducks and the Sharks are equal to the Jets, the Mammoth, and the Devils. And if you look at the Jets and the Mammoth, they have a much better opponent goals against average than the Sharks. So this is something you need to take into consideration. With that being said, the Jets, the Mammoth, and the Devils have 4 games and 3 guaranteed light nights. They all play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So you might want to pick up these players on Monday and drop them Saturday. All of these teams have a good opponent goals against average, so definitely some solid options. And then we also have 2 teams that have 4 games and 3 potential light nights. There's also a chance it's only 2, so that's not the best. Like I said, it depends if you have open roster spots on Sunday. These 2 teams are the Capitals and the Stars, who play Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Moving on to the next page, the Sabres have 3 games and all of them being light nights. So this is also a team where you can stream players, picking them up on Monday and dropping them Saturday. So yeah, there's some solid options there. And then with the Flyers, they're also a team that could have 3 potential light nights. They play Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. If you don't have an open roster spot on Sunday, then the Flyers only have 2 light nights, which is okay. Like, you can pick them up on Monday and then drop them Thursday. But yeah, these are all the teams with the most light nights this week. As you guys know, light nights are extremely important. Picking up streamers to maximize your games and in turn maximizing your fantasy points or filling your cats. And sometimes it can be very difficult to get the streamers that you want for the entire week. A few years ago, I would have to set an alarm for 3 a.m. to get the player that I want, but no longer do I have to do that. Now I can use Fantasy Roundup to automate my waiver wire and schedule these pickups. That is right, guys. Fantasy Roundup is a website where you can link your ESPN and Yahoo Fantasy Hockey account. All you have to do is link your account, and then you can schedule your ads throughout the week. For example, I have an open roster spot on Sunday this week, and that means the Ducks have 4 light nights. I think Chris Kreider is a pretty solid option, line 2 power play 1 guy, and I want to schedule my ad for him. Using Fantasy Roundup, I can do that, so I don't have to set an alarm, and I can guarantee that I get him for the entire week. The link is in the pinned comments below if you guys want to check it out. There's a 7-day free trial if you want to just test it out and see how beneficial it is. In my opinion, it's an absolute cheat code in competitive leagues. And after the 7-day trial, it's $6 US per month. Like I said, more info in the pinned comments below. Shout out to Fantasy Roundup. Moving on to the teams with the least amount of games. We do have 1 team that only plays twice, and that team is the Seattle Kraken. This is not the best for maximizing your game, so you might have to drop some of those average players on the Kraken. Most of them are average, so it's not too difficult. Obviously, I wouldn't drop him on Toro or Vince Dunn, but you guys get the gist. We also have a bunch of teams with 3 games and 0 light nights. That is obviously not the best. You might want to drop some players on these teams. Only average players, not superstars, for some players with a better schedule. These teams are the Oilers, the Lightning, the Kings, the Predators, all with a very hard opponent goals against average. And then also the Flames, the Leafs, the Red Wings, the Senators, the Bruins, and the Wild. All right, moving on, let's talk about the streamers. I would love to rank them like I did last week, but there's so many options, so I'm just going to go team by team. All these players I'm talking about are under 95% rostered, and obviously the value of them will depend on your league format and your league settings. With that being said, Troy Terry's obviously a great option. He's like 70% rostered, so he might be available in like an 8-team or a 10-team league. I think Chris Kreider might be one of my favorite options for this week. He's line 2, power play 1, only like 38% rostered on Yahoo. He's not hitting as much as I'd like, but he's still a very solid option. Jackson Lacombe if he is available. You also have some okay players like McTavish and Beckett-Seneke, line 2 power play 2 guys. You also have some defensemen for elite peripherals like Jake Truba and Radko Gudas. Gudas is much more available, so he's probably the guy that's going to be on your wire. Then you have some third liners. This is only for deeper leagues like Killorn, Vetrano, and Strome. And then you also have Olin Zellweger. I also should mention Dostal is out for a couple of weeks. So Peter Mrazek is probably the 1A and Ville Husso is the 1B. Now with the Sharks, they could have 4 potential light nights. So please check for Sunday. But yeah, there's always good options with the Sharks. Not the best opponent goals against average, but still, Will Smith could be available in a more shallow league. I think he's only like 50% rostered. William Eklund is pretty available. He's a line 2 power play 1 guy. I say Tyler Toffoli here, but he's off power play 1, which does concern me. But he's still an okay player. The ice time is a little bit concerning. Alex Wenberg, he is line 2 power play 1 right now. So, at his roster percentage at like 3% in most leagues, he's a solid stream. You also have Dmitry Orlov, who's sometimes power play 1, sometimes not. It really depends. They're scratching Klingberg some games, but he's still a solid stream. And then you have a guy like Philip Kurashev in a deeper league. He's a top 6 guy. And then depending on your league settings, Mario Ferraro could be a great stream as well because he puts up a lot of blocks. Then with the teams with 4 games and 3 guaranteed light nights, we have the Jets. Very good opponent goals against average this week. Velarde could have a big week. You never know. Could be available in like a more shallow league. You also have Neil Pionk for peripherals. Cole Perfetti. I know Perfetti hasn't been the best, but this might be the week where he has a good week considering their schedule. Top 6 power play 1. Nino Niederreiter is always an okay option. You have guys like Stanley and DeMello for peripherals. And then if you want to, get some deeper league guys, Jonathan Taves is a top 6 guy, Nyquist, Nemestikov, Iafallo, Lowry, etc. Also, guys, Eric Comrie is a good stream as well for this week, considering their opponents. He is the starting goalie with Connor Hellebuck out for another 4 to 5 weeks. And we have the Utah Mammoth. Very good opponent goals against average. Dylan Gunther in a more shallow league. I know he hasn't been the best, but obviously he's still a very talented player. Then we have Nick Schmaltz, the clear sell high a couple of weeks ago. He's still a great stream, though. Line 1 power play 1. Logan Cooley's great, but he's off power play 1. We'll see, though, because Barrett Hayden is out with an illness, I believe. So maybe they'll keep Cooley on power play 1 for a little bit. But that also means that Barrett Hayden, if he returns, would be a great stream as well, because before he got sick, he was line 1 power play 1. JJ Peterka is an okay stream, but he's a line 3 power play 2, so more of a deeper league guy. Then you have some peripheral players like Lawson Krause and Jack McBain for those hits, and then some defensemen like Sean Dursey and Ian Cole. Then with the Devils, obviously you have those top tier guys, probably not available unless you're in like a 6-team or an 8-team league. Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, Dougie Hamilton. Dawson Mercer is probably the best option here because he is getting power play 1 time. He is roughly around 50% rostered. Luke Hughes, sometimes power play 1, sometimes not. Depends on the team's penalty kill. Pretty annoying if you own either of those guys. Brendan Dillon's good for peripherals. Simon Nemec has good ice time, but I think without power play 1, he's going to cool down. And then Arseny Griciak is a decent option as well in a deeper league. All right, moving on to 4 games, 3 potential light nights. These teams play on Sunday, so again, please check. But for the Capitals, we have a couple of good options here. Obviously, like Wilson, Strome, and Carlson are not going to be available in most leagues. But Ryan Leonard is an interesting option here, guys. He is currently on the 3rd line, but we're seeing his ice time increase. And we actually saw him on power play 1 over John Carlson last night. So that's a very interesting development. Very talented young player. I think he's going to be a fantasy stud for many years to come. We also have guys like Alexi Protas and Connor McMichael. They're even strength guys. They're not on power play 1. McMichael's been really good lately, but he's still in the 3rd line. So yeah, I think those 2 options are good if you're in like a 12-team league or even a 10-team league if you just want to get those light nights. Then you also have some defensemen for peripherals like Faravari, Sandin, and Matt Roy. Then with the Stars, not the most options on the Stars. Very different to last year where you had a lot of streaming options because they were so deep. But Rupe Hintz in a more shallow league, I think his roster percentage should be higher in general because he's been a stud. Tyler Seguin's been really good lately. I'm not a power play 1 guy, but in the top 6. Jamie Benn, his ice time is bad, but he is line 1 with Rantanen and Johnston. Then you also have some peripheral plays. Leon Bichel for those hits, obviously. Esa Lindell. And then a deeper league option is Maverick Bourque, who's on the 3rd line. Then we have the Buffalo Sabres, 3 games, 3 light nights. Alex Tuck, obviously is pretty high rostered, but he's always good. Josh Stone is line 1 power play 1 right now, but this could change easily. They're constantly changing, especially with Josh Norris returning this week potentially. Zach Benson on the third line now, but still a solid option. Jason Zucker, very low roster, top 6, a staple on power play 1, good peripherals. He's got to be one of my favorites in terms of roster availability. Jack Quinn's been really good lately, decent ice time, so he's a good option. Ryan McLeod, he's always an okay option. And then obviously Matthias Samuelsson for peripherals, and maybe even a defenseman like Bowen Byram. We also have the Flyers, who could have 3 potential light nights, but you got to check for Sunday. In terms of which players you might want to take a look at, you obviously have guys like Konechny, who are higher rostered. He might be more available in a shallow league. Then you're going to have a player like Trevor Zegras, who has been really good this year. Matvei Michkov, even though the deployment's been so bad. And then there's a lot of other options. They really like to spread out the ice time here. You know, Sean Couturier, Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink, Noah Cates, Owen Tippett, obviously. Tippett has those peripherals and he can get streaky. Christian Dvorak is also a decent option. Like, all these guys get really good ice time or solid ice time consistently. Then for defensemen, you have like Cam York, who's pretty low rostered and is getting great ice time. Travis Sanheim, elite ice time. Emil Andre, who's getting power play time. Yeah, obviously deeper league players, but yeah, lots of options on the Flyers. I also want to mention that normally I do streaming strategies, but because of Sunday and because there's so many options, it's just not useful. So yeah, I'm not doing streaming strategies for this week, but don't worry, I haven't forgot about the segments. It's just going to be a week-to-week basis in terms of when I include the segment. Moving on, let's talk about the easiest and hardest schedule for skaters. Starting with easiest, these are teams that are playing teams that let in a lot of goals. So there is a chance that the players overperform this week on these teams. We have the Minnesota Wild with the best, tied with the Jets. Then you have the Canes, the Bruins, the Canadiens, the Panthers, the Blues, the Mammoth, the Senators, and the Capitals. On the flip side, the hardest schedule for skaters, these are teams that are playing teams that don't let in a lot of goals. So there is a chance that the players on these teams underperform. These teams are the Islanders, the Canucks, the Oilers, the Penguins, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Flyers, the Rangers, the Stars, the Sharks, and the Lightning. Moving on to goalies, the easiest and hardest schedule, starting with the easiest. These are teams that are playing teams that don't score a lot of goals. So there is a chance that these goalies have a solid week. We have the Oilers. I mean, the Oilers, who knows with their goaltending if this even matters, but something to consider. We have the Wild, we have the Red Wings, we have the Avalanche, we have the Flames, we have the Canes, we have the Bruins, we have the Senators, the Panthers, the Stars, and the Sabres. On the flip side, the hardest schedule for goalies. These are goalies that are playing teams that score a lot of goals. We have the Islanders. Could be a tough week for Sorokin. We have the Flyers. We have the Rangers. We have the Sharks. Askarov, who I think is a sell-high goalie, may have a tough week this week. You might be enticed by the Light Knights, guys, but this is a little bit concerning for him. We have the Leafs. We have the Canucks. We have the Blues. We have the Canes. We have the Penguins. We have the Jets. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets and the New Jersey Devils. There's a chance that some of these goalies have a tough week. Before we get into some deployment updates, I want to give a shout out to Underdog Fantasy. If you guys sign up on there using promo code FIREDUP and you play $5, you get $100 in bonus funds. This is a daily fantasy sports platform where you can do pick'ems and best ball drafts on the NHL, NFL, NBA, and more. It's available in all of Canada except Ontario. It's also available in most US states. And yeah, there's more info in the comments below. Moving on to big deployment updates. Mark Stone is back. That means Bowman is down to power play 2, which is obviously not good news for him. Stone might be worth a look if he was dropped. Then we have Cutter Gauthier back on power play 1. It's been 2 games, so we'll see if it sticks, but good news for him, bad news for Beckett Seneke. Then with the Leafs, they've been constantly changing units, mainly because of injuries and also illness, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going to happen, but Cowan is getting some power play 1 looks. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is, Morgan Riley is, so as soon as we get everybody healthy, we're going to have a better understanding of who is on this top power play unit. We also have Moritz Seider back in power play 1. Very good news for Seider owners. That means Axel Sandin-Pellikka is not going to be rosterable in most leagues. So we'll see what happens there if that sticks. Then we have a really interesting one with the Colorado Avalanche. Gabriel Landeskog has taken over power play 1, taking Olofsson off, moving him to power play 2. We also saw Landeskog getting some even strength time with McKinnon last game, so that could be interesting. But I do need to mention Valeri Nichushkin is returning very soon, and I personally think Nichushkin is a better option on the top power play than Landeskog. So I wouldn't rush to drop somebody really good for Landeskog, but it is something to watch out for. Then we have Ryan Leonard on power play 1 over John Carlson last game. I'm unsure if that's going to stick, but that's very interesting. I also want to edit in Maxim Shabanov here. He's been moved up to line 1 with Kyle Palmieri out with a torn ACL. but also he was power play 1 last game over Jonathan Drouin. So if this sticks, he's definitely a guy you want to take a look at. Only 2% rostered, a young, dynamic, skilled player. Lots of points in the KHL last year. 7 points in 13 games, despite only averaging like 12 minutes of ice time per game. So yeah, definitely an interesting player, and I think I might have to put him in the thumbnail. We have Nick Paul on power play 1 with Braden Point out, but Braden Point is listed as day-to-day, so not a long-term thing. We also had Quinton Byfield back on power play 1 over Corey Perry last game. It was only 1 game, and Perry has been good on the power play, so it's hard to say that this is going to stick, but something to maybe be optimistic about if you own Quinton Byfield. Then we also have with the Montreal Canadiens, Zach Bolduc is still line 1 and power play 1. Not good news for Demidov owners, but Bolduc is certainly a must-add player. Obviously depends on your league size, of course. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Then with the Devils, they're still doing the mix of Dougie Hamilton and Luke Hughes on power play 1, so sucks for both of them, to be honest, in fantasy. With the Sabres, we have Doan, Benson, and Zucker on power play 1 with Dahlin and Thompson, but Josh Norris is returning very soon, so I would expect Norris to take Doan off this power play and then to go back to a Norris, Benson, Zucker, Dahlin, Thompson top unit. So yeah, that's interesting. And then with the Sharks, Orlov has been getting more power play 1 time because Klingberg has been getting scratched, falling out of the coach's favor. So that's good for him as well. Also, 3 more updates. Connor Garland seems to be power play 1 over Kiefer Sherwood. It was sort of back and forth last week, but Garland seems to firmly hold that spot. We also have Kyle Palmieri suffering a potentially bad injury. He was the net front guy on power play 1. I know the Islanders power play has been absolutely terrible, so not much of a bump to fantasy relevance, but Anders Lee is likely going to slot in as that net front guy, so at his roster percentage, he's probably worth a look. Moving on to some forward adds, I just think these players are under rostered. Some of them have seen increased deployment as well. Andrei Svechnikov still 65% rostered, line 1 power play 1. We also have Valeri Nichushkin dropped down to 66% rostered. I still think he has a lot of potential. He's a lock for the top 6. They're switching around these lines, so maybe he can play with McKinnon at some point. Power play 1 is not guaranteed, but he'll definitely get back on there at some point. We also have Vincent Trocheck, only 64% roster, line 1 with Panarin, power play 1. I know he's a pure center, but I think it should be higher, especially if your league has hits in any sort of, category or in your points league. No matter how little valued it is, he has a big edge in that, of course. We also have Matt Zuccarello, who I still think is under roster, playing line 1, power play 1 with Kaprizov. We also have Anton Lundell, who I still think is a very under rostered player, putting up really good peripherals, line 1, power play 1, great ice time, very talented player. We have Matt Coronado here. I know ice time has been a little wishy-washy lately, but line 1, power play 1, shooting the puck like crazy, which gives him a big advantage in a lot of leagues. Only 22% rostered as a winger. We also have Jared McCann. I know he's on the Kraken, but he is healthy now. He's only 29% rostered. He's going to get a consistent top 6 power play 1 role. So, he'll go on streaks, and I'm sure this roster percentage will be higher at some point. We also have Josh Norris. He's a pure center. I get it, but he's only 14% rostered. When he was healthy, he was line 1 with Tage Thompson, also power play 1, puts up good hits as well. So depends on your league settings, of course, but he's definitely under rostered in my opinion. We also have Zach Bolduc. Line 1, power play 1, only 15% rostered. Ice time is going up. If this sticks, this roster percentage is definitely way too low. It could easily change, don't get me wrong, because I think Demidov is so talented, but in those deeper leagues, like 12 teams or more, he needs to be scooped up. We also have Andrei Burakovsky, only 15% rostered, line 1 with Bedard, power play 1. Peripherals are trash, but the ice time is great, most of his career pretty much. So I think he's going to be solid rest of season. Then we have Gabriel Landeskog. Like I said earlier, getting some line 1, power play 1 looks, only 21% rostered. Nichushkin is returning soon, so I'm not going to tell you to drop a legit player for Landeskog, but this is something that you need to watch out for, because if Landeskog can return to the player that he was a couple of years ago, then, he should be higher rostered. Maxim Shabanov, like I mentioned before, with Kyle Palmieri out, he has been moved up to line 1. At least mid-game, he was moved up to line 1. We'll see what they do long-term, but he's only 2% rostered. He played 22 minutes that game. He has so much talent, so if he can somehow get consistent deployment, I think this roster percentage could go way up. We also have Connor Garland. I know the Canucks are bad, but 19% rostered, line 1, power play 1, getting like 20 minutes a night. He certainly needs to be looked at, especially in those deeper leagues. For some more forward adds, these are some interesting players, some players that are seeing better deployment, very low rostered. Ryan Leonard is one of them. He was power play 1 last game over John Carlson. He's a rookie, but he's a very, very talented player. Only 7% rostered. If we see him stick on power play 1 and maybe crack into the top 6, we could see this roster percentage go way up. We also have Anders Lee here. He's likely going to be power play 1 as a net front guy with Kyle Palmerio, only 14% rostered. Puts up good peripherals as well. Jason Zucker seems to be under rostered this whole season, but he's back. He's in the top 6. That line with Jack Quinn is good. On the power play 1, seems to be a staple on there. So I think he's under rostered here. We also have Luke Evangelista. I know he's not on power play 1, but he is line 1. He loves to shoot the puck. He's getting the most ice time of his career. He's only 1% rostered. So in those deeper leagues, like 14 teams or more, he's certainly an interesting player that you might want to take a look at. We also have Easton Cowan. This is a young player who's seen an increased role in the Leafs. I know there's been some injuries and some illnesses or whatever, but he's getting some power play 1 looks. He's only 4% rostered. He's shooting the puck. He's getting some top 6 times. So I'm definitely interested, especially at this roster percentage. We also have Barrett Hayden. I know he's been sick, but before he was sick, he was line 1 power play 1. We've seen him go on really hot streaks playing with Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz on that first line. So if he comes back and this sticks, he should certainly be higher rostered. We also have Alex Wenberg. I know he's only a pure center. He's not the best player in the world, but he's getting really good deployment lately on power play 1, so he might be worth a look. I also want to mention Mark Kastelik. This is strictly for hits, guys. He's putting up really good hits with decent ice time, only 14% rostered. And lastly, I want to mention Danila Yurov. He is line 1 with Kirill Kaprizov, with Hartman and Rossi still out, only 2% rostered, a young, talented player. So in those deeper leagues, like 14 teams or more, he's definitely worth a look. I also mentioned 2 players that are now healthy that may have been dropped in your league when they shouldn't have been. Those 2 players are Mark Stone, who's line 2 power play 1, and then also Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who is returning today as I record this. He's only 67% rostered. Moving on to some defenseman ads. I hope you guys picked up Darren Radish, like I told you to last week. Had a monster game last night. It's sort of a no-brainer with Hedman out. Obviously, we don't know the exact timeline, but it could still be a couple of weeks. So I thought I'd include him here once again because he's only 24% rostered. Hampus Lindholm, I understand the peripherals are terrible and the Bruins are not a great team, but he is power play 1 with McAvoy out, so I think 9% rostered is too low. I also want to mention Brant Clark. Drew Doughty is still injured. I know he started to skate, but Clark is getting significant ice time. Only 26% rostered, so this is more of a short-term play. But yeah, I think at the moment he's under rostered, but I wouldn't go dropping a legit player for Brant Clark just because when Doughty returns, the ice time is likely to go down. We also have Cam York. He's 8% rostered. He's quarterbacking power play 1, getting really good ice time. So yeah, I think he's under rostered. I also want to mention Emile Andre, another Flyers player. Jamie Drysdale is on neither of the power play units. Andre's on the second unit, which gets a good amount of timeshare on that power play. So in like a 4-team or 16-team league, he's definitely worth the look at. His roster percentage is like 1 or 2%. And then I also should mention Jackson Lacombe is still under rostered. I think in those shallow leagues where he's sitting on your wire at only 86% rostered, he's worth a look, guys, because I think he's going to be great for the rest of the year. In terms of goalie ads, we still have Eric Comrie on here with Hellebuck out for another like 4 weeks. Joseph Woll is still on here because Stolarz hasn't skated yet. I know the Leafs have not been good, but Woll is seeing a lot of volume on a team that I think should bounce back. We also have Tristan Jarry on here. I think the Penguins are slightly frauds, but, Jarry is healthy and he had 2 starts in a row, and there have been talks of him getting traded to Edmonton potentially. So, yeah, I think he might be worth a look in some deeper leagues. I also want to mention Brandon Bussey of the Carolina Hurricanes. Kochetkov is injured once again. We don't really have an exact timeline, but he's 4% rostered, and it seems that he's sort of splitting with Freddie Anderson. So if you're in a category league or a points league where volume doesn't matter, then he's definitely worth a look for the short term. Another short term guy is Peter Mrazek. Dostal is out 2 to 3 weeks. So Mrazek is probably the 1A or the starter, and then Ville Husso is the 1B or the backup. So in those deeper leagues, then he might be worth a look. And then lastly, Thatcher Demko, he is returning soon. He joined the team on their road trip. So if he was dropped, you might want to take a look. All right, guys, that's the end of the video. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.